Hey, what's good? Chris here, welcome back to the channel, and today we're talking about two lenses that you're probably thinking about buying. These are pretty similar, or they should be. This one is the 18-55 f2.8 f4, and this one is the 16-55 f2.8. This lens is probably the best lens for, let's say, travel and landscapes, as well as events and everything else. This one is a great lens for travel and landscapes and events and everything else. Wait, so they're the same? Well, definitely they're not. And today I'm going to tell you a few things about each and every one of these lenses, and I hope it's going to make you decide which one you should go with. One is stabilized, the other one isn't. One is constant aperture, the other one isn't. So let's talk about them. Okay, so if you are not subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and subscribe. This is a photography channel. My name is Chris, and we're doing all kinds of videos on this channel that will help you understand photography and will help you decide what gear to buy, as well as will give you tips and tricks of how to shoot and how to raise your level of photography, if I can say that. So today we're talking about two similar lenses in terms of focal length. One is the 16-55 f2.8 constant aperture all the way to 55. The other one is the 18-55 f2.8 f4, which is a variable aperture, meaning that the more you're zooming, the more you're losing light. So which one is for you? Let's start with the 16-55. This is the lens that any event photographer, any landscape photographer shooting Fuji, any travel photographer will probably use. It's a great lens, very well built. It's an XF lens. It's the red badged lens. Everything about it is great. The sharpness, the autofocus, the glass inside, the coatings. This lens performs as it should be, and the price is accordingly to how good it is. So this one is probably a more professional lens than the other one, but is this lens for you? Well, I'm not sure if you're shooting professional photography or if you want to level your photography a little bit more and create better photos. The sharpness, like I said, the color rendition of this lens, it's beautiful. It is a hefty lens, very well designed. It also has a rubber gasket right here, which means it's a weather sealed lens. And other than that, I do love this lens. The aperture ring is marked and you know exactly what aperture you're on. And at the end of it, you have the auto aperture. It's a little bit of a longer click, and then you're turning to auto aperture. So this is the lens that I use for all my events, and lately I'm using it pretty much for everything. I might be inclined to say that this lens is a bit cumbersome in terms of weight and in terms of heft. It's a lens that if you're carrying with, it's probably the same weight as your X-T3 or your X-T20. So if you're not shooting professional bodies like the X-T3, X-T4, X-Pro 3, this lens doesn't make much sense in terms of carrying with you all day. So now this one comes to play. This is the 18-55 f2.8 f4. It's a variable aperture lens that changes the aperture as long as you're zooming. So when you're zooming around, let's say 23mm is already 3.2, at probably 27mm is already f4. So is this lens good? Well, it's amazing. It's a lens that I never thought I will consider being as a kit lens. Fujifilm is selling this lens with all their bodies pretty much, or in the past, all the bodies that they were releasing had this lens on, and it does have some amazing perks. First and foremost, it has a auto aperture click right here, so you can turn it to auto aperture without turning the aperture ring, which, by the way, it's not marked. So this is a little bit of a downside, because you will never know what aperture are you on if you're not looking into the viewfinder or on the back of your camera on the screen. But I digress. I was saying that this lens is stabilized. It does have a stabilization motor in. you can hear it. And it does have a switch right here that turns the stabilization on and off. If you're shooting landscapes, for example, and you want to have it on a tripod, this stabilization should be off because you don't need it, and it might interfere with the stabilization that the tripod offers. So that's great because the other one doesn't have any kind of stabilization. And if you're shooting a camera like the X-T3, like I'm doing it, or the X-T3 or the X-T20 or the X-T3, anything other than the X-T4 and the XE4, the new release, and the XH1, they don't have image stabilization. So this one is very helpful, especially for shooting videos and if you're shooting handheld B-rolls or interviews or whatever. And also if you're shooting in low light, the stabilization can help you at least, let's say, 2 stops, and it's probably rated for more. I'm not coming with the technicalities today, but at least 2 stops of stabilization, which means you can go down from 1/100th of a second to, let's say, around 1/50th of a second without no problem, because you have the stabilization in the lens. And that is what makes this lens better than the other one, because the f2.8 aperture, though it's variable and it goes all the way to f4, can help you in low light, and having the image stabilization, it's gonna be even better. Now, in terms of build, the lens is built very, very well. It's a small lens, very, very small comparing to the 16 to 55. So this is the comparison between these two lenses, and I believe that that is a great factor, especially if you're shooting Fuji, because you are looking for lenses that are small and portable, and this one is one of them. And being a zoom, it's very, very reliable, and also a very easy to carry it all around. Like I said, for travel, for landscapes, people are thinking that this being a kit lens is not amazing. All the kit lenses on the market are usually f3.5 to 5.6. This one is special. It's an f2.8 to f4, which is pretty wide in terms of aperture for shooting all kinds of things. I actually used this lens for events and I was very pleased. The sharpness, the image quality, the resolution, as well as the colors that comes out of it are beautiful. It does have all the coatings, and you won't get much of distortion, of chromatic aberration, but it's all about your style of shooting. If you're shooting too close and you're trying to do a close-up using a very wide focal length like the 18mm, you might get a little bit of a distortion that can be easily fixed in Lightroom or Photoshop or any other software that permits that. But because this lens is not that expensive, it doesn't have a rubber gasket like the 16 to 55, and it's not very suitable for all kinds of elements. Now, if you're going into a drizzle or a little bit of a wind and dust, you won't probably have any kind of issues. So be very aware of how you're using this lens. For me, it was good. Like I said, I shoot it in all kinds of conditions, and I didn't own this lens for a long time, as you probably know when I talked about it, but it is definitely a lens that I was happy with, and I'm gonna keep it. I use it primarily for video when I'm not shooting my Sony cameras, and it's very good because the stabilization can offer me a little bit of a stable footage, and even if I'm shooting handheld, trying to pan left and right or up and down, this is a lens that I will definitely advise you to buy if you don't have it, if you didn't buy it with as a kit with one of your cameras. But this is a lens that I would recommend any and every Fuji shooter, professional or amateur, to buy if you don't have it. This is a lens that you should have because it's small, it's portable, it's a zoom lens that doesn't extend much. You won't take a lot of space in your bag, you won't put a lot of weight on your shoulder, and it's a very versatile lens because of the focal length. It's around 24 to 70, let's say, in full frame, which is a great lens for shooting all kinds of portraits and also landscapes and street photography and events. If you are especially a videographer, this lens is the cheapest alternative to go with if you're shooting video. For many, the 16 to 80 is a better lens for travel because it does have a constant aperture of f4. But I will tell you this, that extra stop of light from f4 to f2.8 It's very helpful. It is helpful, especially if you're shooting at night, if you're shooting in low light conditions, in bars and restaurants, if you're shooting your kids at home. That extra stop of light can make a lot of difference, as well as the image stabilization. So this was my take on the 16-55 and 18-55. They're great lenses, both of them. One is more expensive, the other one is a little bit more suitable for video because it does have image stabilization more inside. One is a let's say professional lens by the red badge. The other one is more like an kit lens, or so it's called. So whatever you're choosing, choose wise. Test these lenses before you're going to buy them. And also don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell to be notified when I'm putting these kind of videos up. Hit that like button and stay focused, my friends. I will definitely see you in a bit.